There is a silence more deafening than any scream, the silence that comes when you realize nothing truly matters, not your ambitions, not your sacrifices, not your love stories, your heartbreaks, your milestones, not even your suffering. Nihilism is not simply a philosophy. It is a collision with emptiness. It is a mirror reflecting a universe that does not care whether you succeed or fail, whether you live or die. It is the cold recognition that no grand narrative holds all the threads together. Some people touch this realization and never recover. They spiral into despair, depression, annihilation of self. Others encounter it and find a strange kind of freedom, an unshakable liberation from expectation, judgment, and the tyranny of should. At its core, nihilism is neither inherently destructive nor inherently liberating. It is simply the assertion that meaning is not built into the fabric of existence. There is no cosmic purpose, no ultimate reward for the virtuous or punishment for the wicked, no hidden ledger balancing your pain against your joy, and that knowledge raw, unornamented, demands an answer from you. If nothing matters, then why do anything at all? This is the question at the heart of nihilism, whether the absence of meaning must lead us into despair, or whether it can become an invitation to create meaning for ourselves. In this video, we will walk carefully through the core of nihilism, not to romanticize it, not to dismiss it, but to understand it, to see how it arises, how it breaks us, how it can quietly reshape the landscape of the human soul. Because sometimes, it is only when the old illusions fall away that something more honest can begin. This is the descent. This is the core of nihilism. It doesn't begin with a catastrophe. It begins almost always with a quiet fracture, a moment when the stories you were told about the world, the ones you held onto like oxygen, suddenly stop making sense. Maybe it happens when the prayers you whispered into the darkness echo back unanswered. Maybe it happens when you watch someone you love suffer without cause, without justice, without explanation. Or maybe it happens in the monotony, when you realize that your days have become a hollow performance, a ritual of empty gestures propped up by habit and fear. Nihilism is not born out of mere cynicism. It is born out of lucidity, a terrible clarity that pierces the illusions we cling to for comfort. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Friedrich Nietzsche. When Nietzsche wrote those words, he wasn't celebrating, he was mourning, because when the old gods collapse, when the scaffolding of inherited meaning dissolves, the human mind is left unmoored, and in that unmooring, that vast unlit territory where the compass spins without anchor, the seed of nihilism takes root. It is the recognition that every narrative, every system of morality, every institutional promise is a construct. And when you see through the construct, when you taste the emptiness behind it, you can never fully return to innocence. This is the birth of nihilism, the death of certainty, the implosion of the grand story, the realization that the world is not obliged to give you purpose, and perhaps never had any to give. It is both terrifying and honest, and sometimes the most devastating truths are also the most liberating. It would be comforting to believe that such a realization is purely intellectual, an abstract concept you can discuss over coffee and leave behind when you go home. But nihilism is not an idea you entertain. It is a force that consumes you from the inside out. When meaning evaporates, something primal in you collapses. The will to strive, to love, to endure, all of it begins to look absurd, like an actor performing to an audience that has already left the theater. This is not melodrama. It is the raw psychological consequence of encountering a universe that is indifferent to your existence. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. Jean-Paul Sartre. But when you have built your identity on borrowed meanings, on external validation, on inherited belief, the removal of those structures can feel like annihilation. Suddenly, your accomplishments look like arbitrary accidents. Your relationships feel like a dance of coincidence and convenience. Your suffering becomes not a test of character, but a random phenomenon. A cosmic shrug. This is the emotional collapse of nihilism, the moment when all your striving feels like an elaborate illusion, when your heart still longs for purpose, but your mind refuses to believe in it. And yet, beneath the despair, there is a deeper, unspoken question. If nothing matters by default, does that mean you are condemned to emptiness forever? Or could this collapse be an opportunity, a clean slate on which something more authentic might be written? Nihilism strips you bare. It tears down every comforting lie. It forces you to stand alone in a universe that will not applaud your survival. And in that loneliness, that unadorned vacancy, you are presented with the most radical freedom imaginable. The freedom to decide, without illusion, what meaning is worth creating. There is a strange, almost forbidden comfort in nihilism. After the initial shock, after the scaffolding of meaning collapses, a hush settles over your mind. No more striving, no more performing, no more endless hunger to prove yourself worthy of some invisible scorekeeper. When you finally accept that the universe is indifferent, a peculiar relief rises in you. If nothing matters, then nothing has to matter. You can stop contorting yourself to fit a mold you never agreed to. You can stop sacrificing your sanity for accolades that evaporate the moment you grasp them. You can stop pretending your suffering is noble or destined or part of a grand plan. In the void, everything is permitted, and nothing is required. Life has no meaning the moment you lose the illusion of being eternal. Jean-Paul Sartre. And so the void becomes seductive, a refuge from the tyranny of expectations. People around you might recoil from this emptiness, but you feel something almost akin to peace. It is the first honest moment you've tasted in years. No gods demanding your obedience, no institutions dictating your purpose, just the clean, quiet absence of significance. This is the paradox of nihilism. It is both a wound and a balm. It wounds you by stripping away every comforting illusion, and it soothes you by releasing you from the performance of meaning. Many people stop here. They resign themselves to apathy. They wear cynicism like armor. They insist that caring is weakness and that hope is for fools. But beneath that armor, a deeper question still trembles. If you could choose, freely, without coercion, would you really want to live in a world without any meaning at all? When the dust settles, when the old illusions are dead and buried, you are left alone with a stark, unyielding choice. You can collapse, surrender to despair, dissolve into numbness, spend the rest of your life mocking those who still dare to believe. Or you can create, not because the universe demands it, not because some doctrine commands it, but because you decide, in the full knowledge of meaninglessness, to make meaning anyway. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Friedrich Nietzsche. This is the existential crossroads. No philosophy can walk you through it. No teacher can hold your hand. No ideology can absolve you of the responsibility. If nothing matters, then you are terrifyingly, magnificently free. You can define your own why. You can build your own story, even knowing it will end. And that is where nihilism transforms from a philosophy of despair into a gateway to something more powerful, a life unshackled by inherited purpose, a life that does not need cosmic approval, a life you author yourself, with the humility to know it is temporary, and the courage to care anyway, because perhaps the most profound act a human being can perform is to look into the abyss and say, even if nothing matters, I will live as if it does. That is not weakness. That is not delusion. That is the ultimate act of rebellion against the void. We grow up in moral frameworks so embedded, we mistake them for laws of nature, good and evil, right and wrong, worthy and unworthy. These binaries feel absolute, engraved in the fabric of existence itself. But nihilism spares no illusion, and morality is perhaps the greatest illusion of all. If there is no divine judge, no cosmic accountant balancing your deeds, no universal ledger of good and evil, then every morality is a human invention, a construct, a convenient fiction we use to govern each other and to soothe ourselves. There are no moral phenomena at all, only a moral interpretation of phenomena. Friedrich Nietzsche. This is not to say that cruelty or kindness are the same in consequence. They are not. But in the nihilistic gaze, neither is backed by an inherent cosmic value. The universe does not reward the virtuous. It does not avenge the innocent. It does not care whether you devote your life to healing or to conquest. And when you see that, truly see it, the scaffolding of judgment collapses. For many, this is intolerable. They rush to rebuild the old certainties. They cling to dogma. They pretend objectivity still exists. But for the one willing to stand in that collapse, a radical honesty emerges. Morality is a choice, not a law, not an inheritance, a choice. If you are to live with integrity, it cannot be because you fear divine retribution. It must be because you choose, deliberately, to act in ways that align with your own deepest values, even knowing they are yours alone. This is the terrifying maturity nihilism demands. To live ethically, not because the universe commands it, but because your conscience does. If you walk far enough through nihilism, if you let it strip away every comforting story, you arrive at a kind of quiet no one warns you about. It isn't despair anymore. It isn't rage. It isn't numbness. It is something simpler, an uncomplicated liberation. Because when you no longer believe in cosmic purpose, you also free yourself from the tyranny of proving your worth. There is no ultimate scoreboard, no final judgment, no eternal consequence tallying your every triumph and failure. Just this, your one short life, unrepeatable and unsupervised. The absence of hope is not despair. It is clarity. Pema Chödrön. This clarity can feel desolate at first, but stay in it long enough, and you start to feel something almost like grace. If nothing matters, then you are free to care anyway, free to love with no promise of permanence, free to create beauty that no God demands, free to define success by your own criteria. And if you stumble, if you fail, if you disappoint, so what? The universe was never keeping score. This is the strange freedom nihilism gives you, the permission to live without apology, to stop performing, to stop justifying, to stop seeking cosmic endorsement for your fragile human hopes. If you want to love, love. If you want to create, create. If you want to rebel against the absurdity, do it wholeheartedly, because meaning may be an invention, but it is also a gift, a defiant act of consciousness against the indifference of the void. When the illusion of objective morality shatters, the first temptation is apathy. If nothing is sacred, if all values are constructs, why bother caring at all? But this is only the first shallow layer of nihilism, the adolescent thrill of tearing everything down. Stay in the emptiness long enough, and something else begins to stir, a quieter, more mature impulse. If nothing is sacred by default, then everything can become sacred by choice. In a universe indifferent to your existence, every act of integrity becomes more, not less, profound. To show compassion without cosmic reward, to extend kindness knowing it will not be tallied in some divine ledger, is not weakness. It is a radical, sovereign act. Man is condemned to be free. Jean-Paul Sartre. Freedom without excuses, freedom without safety nets. In the face of nothingness, you alone become the author of your ethics. And here, a new question emerges. If you no longer believe in an objective right or wrong, what values will you create anyway? When nothing compels you to care, will you still choose to protect the vulnerable? When no eternal justice exists, will you still refuse to betray your own conscience? When there is no karmic scorekeeper, will you still strive to be honest? This is the ethics of emptiness, choosing your values freely, not because you are forced, but because you are willing. It is harder than following a doctrine. It is lonelier than inheriting commandments, but it is also more authentic. In the face of the void, the most courageous act you can perform is to live by an ethic you crafted yourself, knowing no God will ever validate it, and choosing it anyway. After the collapse, after the disillusionment, after the quiet liberation, a question inevitably emerges. If I no longer believe in a given purpose, Can I create my own? This is where nihilism becomes not a prison, but a canvas. If nothing is inherently meaningful, then you are free to define what matters to you, not as an escape from emptiness, but as a response to it. The meaning of life is whatever you ascribe it to be. Joseph Campbell. This does not mean your purpose will be eternal or universal. It does not mean it will be objectively true. It means it will be yours. And in a universe that guarantees nothing, that might be the most profound act of defiance. What would it look like to rebuild meaning deliberately? To decide that love matters to you, even if it ends. To decide that beauty is worth creating, even if no one remembers it. To decide that growth is worth pursuing, even if it is ultimately erased by time. This is the art of creating purpose from nothing, a conscious choice to care, to build, to hope, not because you must, but because you can. You will still feel the ache of the void. You will still remember the cold clarity of nihilism, but your life will no longer be an accident. It will be an authored story, a handmade testament to your willingness to love in a universe that does not require it. This is not delusion. It is courage. It is a decision to meet the void with an open heart. And in that decision, you discover that meaninglessness does not destroy you. It frees you to become the meaning maker you were always meant to be. Once you have walked the corridors of nihilism, once you have faced the cold, unblinking truth that the universe is not obliged to care about you, it is tempting to believe you have outgrown all sentiment, that you are too lucid to be moved by love, too disillusioned to be inspired, too awake to ever be vulnerable again. But this too is another illusion, a more subtle kind of avoidance, because while nihilism can strip away your comforting fictions, it cannot erase your humanity. You still ache, you still long for connection, you still feel when the light hits the world a certain way. You still hunger for something, anything that feels real. To live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Friedrich Nietzsche. This is the quiet paradox. Even when you know that meaning is invented, your heart insists on creating it. You fall in love, knowing it will end. You nurture your children, knowing they will one day die. You build, knowing time will swallow everything you make. And still, you do it. Because your humanity is not an error. It is not a glitch in the simulation. It is the raw, exquisite proof that even in a meaningless universe, a sentient being can choose to care. This is the return to humanity, not a regression into delusion, but an embrace of the truth that caring is what makes you alive. To live with open eyes is to let yourself be moved, to stand unarmored in front of the absurdity, and to respond with tenderness instead of cynicism. When you realize that nothing matters, and then decide to love anyway, you become unbreakable. If nihilism was your descent into emptiness, then this is your ascent into authorship. You are no longer a believer in inherited purpose, nor a prisoner of despair. You are something rarer, someone who has seen the void and learned to build inside it. Life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning, and we bring it to life. Joseph Campbell. This is the final embrace, the decision to become the creator of your own significance. It is not a single moment of epiphany. It is a daily practice, a quiet, relentless refusal to let the absence of inherent meaning become an excuse for passivity. It means choosing what matters to you, even when no one else agrees. It means tending to your relationships, even when you know nothing lasts. It means creating art, even when you suspect no one will care. And it means waking up each morning and asking yourself, what will I choose to honor today? Not because you must, not because you are commanded, but because you can. Because in the final accounting, meaning is not given, it is made. And those who learn to make it, those who stand in the emptiness with their hearts still open, are the most courageous people alive. You are not here to inherit a purpose. You are here to author one. And maybe, just maybe, that is enough. So here you are. At the end of the descent, you have looked into the mirror of nothingness. You have seen a universe that will not applaud your victories or weep for your losses. You have stood in the cold clarity that nothing, not love, not morality, not legacy, is guaranteed to mean anything beyond the stories you give it. And yet, you are still here. You are still breathing, still longing, still searching. This is the quiet miracle of consciousness. Even when every illusion is shattered, some stubborn ember inside you refuses to die. It is the part of you that whispers, if nothing matters by default, then everything is available by choice. You can live in cynicism, reducing all beauty to chemicals and coincidences. You can hide behind irony, mocking every effort to care. You can declare the whole experiment pointless and drift into comfortable apathy. But you don't have to, because while nihilism can erase your inherited meanings, it can never erase your freedom to create your own. Maybe the point was never to find the purpose. Maybe the point was always to become the one who gives purpose, the artist of your own significance, the author of your own ethic, the quiet rebel who chooses to love, even knowing it ends. You are not here to be certain. You are not here to be correct. You are here to be awake, to stand in the vast indifference of it all, and still whisper, I will care, I will build, I will love, because I choose to. That is not naivety. That is not weakness. That is your birthright as a conscious being. And in the end, maybe that is all the meaning you ever needed.